Hi, I'm Yosefa Huber. I'm a US CPA, and I'm here with Motty Handler, who is an insurance agent with over 10 years experience working with people in Israel. And we're going to go over some of the different insurance options, specifically things that you're going to get through your employer, and actually look at where you can see these things on your own documents. So we're going to look at a tlush maskoret, tofes Sheesh, which is the annual wage statement, and also the annual statements that you'll get from your insurance companies, so that you can look at these yourself and you can see how much you're putting in, how much your employer is putting in. Motty, can you give us a little bit more of your background?
Yeah, hi. So my name is Motty Handler. I'm an Israeli but an American native speaker. I grew up in an English-speaking neighborhood, I'm an insurance agent. I do pensions, life insurance, medical insurance, savings plans, long-term care, all types of insurance. Also car and home insurance, business insurance, and I'm self-employed for the past more than 6 years. I'm in the business for more than 10, 11 years. And this is what I do. I speak to people, meet with people, and try to get them on the right track in order to save more money and get better deals, better conditions on their pension plans.
So my specialty is working mostly with US citizens who live in Israel. And Motty is one of my go-to people when I see something that doesn't make sense or when that's something I don't understand. It's so important in my profession that we have people we can turn to. So I ask Motty questions, and I've also used him to personally go over my insurances and pensions to make sure that my coverage makes sense, that I don't have things that are overlapping, that are paying for no reason. So this is a service that Motty does, where he'll go over your individual statements without, and he charges for this service specifically so that you don't have pressure to buy insurances from him if what you have is already working. You can just pay him for the time to explain what you already have.
It's a second opinion service.
Yes. Yeah, so even if you do have another pension advisor, you can go to him for a second opinion, and he can explain and give you a second opinion and explain what you have. So I'm going to go ahead and jump right in, sharing my screen, and show you a tlush maskoret, and you can excuse my pronunciation, regardless of how long I have been in Israel. So this is an example of a tlush maskoret, which is your monthly statement. And this happens to be the August statement. So I'm just going to go over the real basics here, and then we'll get into the pension type things that we're looking at. So you have this person is making 9,500 shekels a month is the basic wages if this person works all of their hours. They also happen to get havra'ah this month. But do you want to explain that quickly? I know that there are a lot of questions about that. I'm guessing you can explain that.
Yeah. Havra'ah is actually like annual vacation that the employer is obligated to pay the employee. It can be either paid divided monthly, or what happens usually it's either paid in July or August as a lump sum. Here we can see it's paid as a one-time annual payment. The employer isn't obligated to contribute to pension or to pitsuim on this amount. It's above the. That's why it's also separated from the sachar yesod.
And what is it based on? Is it a percentage of wages? Is it the same for everybody in Israel?
It's usually there's like the basic amount, and employers can also give more. It has to do with the vetek, how long a person is working in the job.
And then you can also see this particular person being August. He or she probably took off a few hours. So in addition to any vacation days that they took, they were also short 4.5 hours. So you can see 4.5 hours times their monthly, their hourly salary comes out of their wages. So if you do see a minus, that's what it's for. You may also see overtime. It depends on how your employer works, monthly, weekly, whatever like that. So then we will move on, and let's see some of the things that are coming out of the salary. So this is the total, right?
First of all, the chayav mas haknasa or chayav bituach lomi, this is the gross salary. Sach hakol tashlumim. Yeah. So we have, so that's 11,710. That's the gross. And the net, the nikuim is deductions, or nikuim is meaning something that's reduced. And then afterwards, we see that the sachar neto, the net salary, net wages, how much money actually goes into the bank account. That's the neto letashlum. Okay. Now, in order to get to the sachakol nikuim, those are the deductions. So we have 1,675 total. Then if we go to the right, we can see the nikuei chova. These are the deductions that the employer is obligated to reduce. We have bituach leumi, dmei briut, which is also has to do with bituach leumi, harel keren pensya, and al chulel shach keren ishtalmut. Some employers don't write where the money is going to, which is not as good because it's harder to follow afterwards to see that the money actually went into the fund. We don't know which fund it went into. So what we see here is, we see the harel keren pensya, and then the deduction, the 570 is the employee's part of the pension. Now the pension is based on three portions. The first portion is the employee's deduction towards pension. Here we see it's 570. Go back to a different part of the tlush. On the left, we can see sachar lepitzuim and sachar lekupat gemel and sachar lekeren ishtalmut. Based on that amount, the employer is contributing towards pension. And the employer is not always obligated to contribute on the whole salary. So it's always important to look to see that the connection between the sachar lekupat gemel and the actual sachar within the main part of the salary. All in all, we have 6% as the employee, another 6.5% the employer puts, and another 6% the employer puts as pitzuim. Okay. So we see in the tlush, we see only our part, the employee's part, here we see in harel keren pensya. The second thing is the al chulel shach keren ishtalmut. Keren ishtalmut is like a study fund, which is money that's closed for 6 years since the time you open it up. And then, and in most cases, the employee will be contributing 2.5% of his salary or her salary, and the employer will be contributing 7.5%. So here we see the 238 shekels, which is 2.5% of the salary once again. And then, so all of these nikuim, all of these deductions go to the left side.
So all of the things basically from here up are, you have the gross salary that the employee is getting, and then you have the things that are the employee's money that is coming out of what they're going to see in the bank. So this, in some ways, is their money. They're not going to see it anytime soon, if ever. So the bituach leumi and damei briut are basically kinds of taxes that they're not seeing. They're not ever going to see that. That's a tax they're required to pay. And then these are things that they can see. This one, the keren pensya, they will probably see at retirement. And the keren hishtalmut, this is the acronym for keren hishtalmut. They may see that anywhere from in 6 years from now, actually less, because if they started that pension, the keren hishtalmut 6 years ago, 7 years ago, 8 years ago, they could be contributing to something that they could actually potentially open tomorrow, right?
Yeah, the money is liquid. You can pull it out whenever you want once the 6 years pass. And it's actually a very good place. Maybe you need to speak about the American tax part of it, but if, let's say, we're not talking about an American citizen, but any other citizen, so there's actually a tax benefit of putting money into a keren ishtalmut. First of all, when you contribute, there's a small tax benefit. And the second, again, there's tax benefit when you pull out the money. There's no tax on the capital gains, meaning it's capital gain tax free, something that doesn't exist besides in this, other than this plan, and keren ishtalmut doesn't exist in Israel. So we're actually making money on the tax we're saving. It's still gaining more and more money. So it's really highly recommended to keep keren ishtalmut in and not withdraw it as long as you can. Some people even leave it until pension, and then it's gaining more and more, and it's really doing very good. It's a good idea to keep it in.
And if you do really need money, one thing to consider, and maybe you can speak with this, yes, is that you can take loan against the keren ishtalmut.
Exactly. With very good, most of the karanot, especially if the money is if it's keren ishtalmut that's mature and you can pull out the money, it's liquid money. So most karanot ishtalmut give now. With the corona, they reduced it a little bit, but they can give you 60% of the money with a very good interest rate, like prime plus 0.6. in some cases, prime plus 1, very low interest. And in the meantime, our money is still gaining money and we're paying less money than what we're gaining in average. So it's actually leverage. We're taking the money and our money is making money for us.
So I do want to clarify that the tax benefits that Motty is saying are Israeli tax benefits. So these are things that are that have very nice tax benefits on the Israel side. That does not mean they're tax-free in the U.S. So you do need to speak with your U.S. accountant. Hopefully you have a U.S. CPA or EA, a professional U.S. accountant in Israel who specializes in these things, and they can look at your Israeli statements. If you're using an accountant in the U.S. and you just say, hey, this is how much I earned every year, they're not going to see these details and they're not going to know exactly what needs to be reported. So I really do recommend people use a professional U.S. accountant in Israel who understands how pensions, Israeli pensions work, Israeli guaranteed shtalmut work, and how those are taxed by the U.S. And the same goes for the U.S. Let's say that you have something that has U.S. tax benefits like a 401k or an IRA, and they may not have the same tax benefits in Israel. So by the same note, if you have those things, you'll also need an Israeli accountant, especially if you're past 10 years of Aliyah, or if you expect to be taking distributions from those types of things when you are past your 10 years of after you make Aliyah, you will need an Israeli accountant who specializes in the foreign tax issues. Now, if you're more than 10 plus years and you have a Roth IRA, it's such a gray area. I wouldn't bother your Israeli accountant too much with it yet because things could change so much. But it's definitely
Israeli accountants hardly. The Israeli accountants, not all of them know how to deal with the Israeli pensions, so let's not burden them with the American ones also.
Yeah, it's not only a specialized area, but it's the IRAs are one of the most gray areas in Israeli law, so I've been told. So wait till it's a little closer before you start worrying too much about it. But the bottom line is that you do have these things that have great tax benefits on one side or the other. That doesn't mean that they're bad on the other side, but just don't assume because it's exempt on one country that it's exempt in the other. Yeah, and then the other thing a lot of people ask me, and I don't want to dive too much into it, but there is an issue. There is an issue with what we call PFIX, which I'll definitely go over in another video. PFIC. It's an acronym if you want to Google what I'm talking about. And that's an issue. There's an issue of PFIX, and there's also an issue of trusts, foreign trusts. So a U.S. citizen who owns a trust outside the U.S., is the beneficiary of a trust outside the U.S., or has any sort of contributions or interactions with a trust outside the U.S., can have some very burdensome reporting. So one of the things that keeps these specific pensions, like Karen Hishtalmut, out of those requirements is that the employer is putting in at least 50%. That's a really important definition. So as long as your employer is putting in at least 50% to your pension and your Karen Hishtalmut, then you don't have this very burdensome trust reporting. If you have a private pension, for example, a kupot gamel hashka'a, that's a separate issue, and you really need to speak with your professional U.S. accountant in Israel about all of the issues that may bring up. But in this, a Karen Hishtalmut is different. A kupot gamel that you get from your employer is different. It's I'm going to, just to keep from going too deeply in it, I'm going to very generally call them okay, even though that's, everything in foreign taxation is very gray, but they're sort of okay. Let's just call them okay for now. They don't have burdensome reporting and punitive taxation as long as your employer is putting in at least 50%. So with a Karen Hishtalmut, the employer is putting in 3 times as much as the employee. And with a pension or kupot gamel, very often that is combined with your pitsuim. So they're going into the same fund, and your employer is the only one contributing to the pitsuim. So again, it could be that your employer is contributing about 2 times whatever you're contributing to.
So you want to go over to the Mavishesh?
Yeah, let's go over it. Well, but while we're here, just real quick, I'm just going to, for anyone who wants to understand this a little better, this is the chofesh that someone is the vacation days that someone is accruing.
That limit is how much they had. They used 2, so
and then this is how much they have when they're done. So you can see they got, this person got 1 during the year. So if they hadn't used 2, they would have had 5.25. And they didn't use any sick days, so they got some more of those too. Okay, so let's jump over to the Mea Sheesh. Now, this is not the same person's Mea Sheesh. This is a Mea Sheesh, a Tophus Mea Sheesh, a Form 106 from 2018. So Tophus 106, you see up here, this is an annual wage statement. So I'm going to go over this very generally, and then Motty can jump in with the details of what we're looking at with the Mea Sheesh is something I deal with a lot. So usually I am not looking at someone's tlush maskoret. I don't want to deal with that. I definitely don't want to deal with 12 of them. I want to look at the annual statement. So one of the things I'm looking at here, down here, it's cut off a bit, but here it will say what months you worked for this employer. So this person that we're looking at started with this employer in July, and so they worked July through December, and if it wasn't cut off, you would see the letter kaf for Ken. Yes, right? And you would see a nun for no often, or it's blank, one or the other. Sometimes you just see X's under the months they actually worked, or check marks. It can be shown in different ways. But this is one of the things I'm always looking at, because if this person only sent me this, then I, as an accountant, am likely to say, hey, where were you working in the first half of the year? Or did you collect unemployment or maternity leave or something else? That's one thing I look at. Then this first line is your maskoret, your annual wages. So this is how much this person earned from the employer since they started in July, sometime in July. And then you can also see a number of things. And this is one of many formats of Tophus 106 if you're my client, I'd be happy to go over yours with you in a little more detail. There are a lot of different formats. This is one of my favorites. It shows up a little better on the screen. Some of them are a little not as pretty, but you may see a number of things here. You may see income earned from the previous year that they was paid out during this year, or you may see if you have stock options, some sort of a 102 plan. You might see that up here as well, or sometimes in some forms you'll see income earned in a previous year at the bottom, and then continuing down, you see. I'm going to let Motty handle some of these things, but one of the things I'm looking at is what the employer is putting into pensions and Karen Hishtalmut. So what I look at is the employer contributions to the pension, or Kupat Gemel, whatever, or it could be Menhalim, anything like that. And I'm going to let Motty explain some of the differences and similarities there. This is the amount of income that this percentage is based on. So this is a really nice form. You can see how much your employer is putting in, what percentage your employer is putting in, and what it's based on. So this, you can see here, this number doesn't exactly match. This person made $56,000, and the pension is only based on $51,000. Could mean they got a bonus. You want to, Motty, can you think of some other examples of why this number would be higher?
Either a bonus, it can be, let's say, sometimes employers can pay it as extra time.
The Havra'ah also hours. Would be here, right?
Yeah. And you can have, here in maskoret lelo sotsial, it can be, let's say, nesiot, if it goes into here, and then the person won't have pension on that amount. In many cases, you need to, it's very important to look here to see, here it makes sense. The ratio between how much is insured and how much isn't makes sense. It looks normal. If they call it a bonus, so then they won't put it into pension, contribute on that money to pension. And it's a way to skip to cut off a little bit.
How about if someone was getting commissions? Is that something that might be exempt from insurance?
So it depends. Commissions, if it's there's amalot and there's bonusim. Okay, amalot is a commission based on matzlacha. Okay, based on something you sold. Okay, a bonus is, let's say you have some kind of quarter, some kind of amount you need to do, something you need to do within a quarter or within a year, then you get an annual bonus. Okay. Now, if a amala is if your salary, let's say there's a base, let's say 5,000 shekels base salary plus amalot plus commissions. So then the amalot are a portion of your pension, portion of your salary, and then based on that, you need to get pension and pitsuim. On a bonus, you don't. The employer isn't obligated. Okay, so amalot commissions are, and a bonus isn't.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay. So continuing down here, this person also their employer is putting into a keren ishtalmut, which my understanding is not required. It's not required by law, though it's very nice. It has lovely tax benefits. And compared to how much is taken out of your salary, the employer is putting in 3 times that. So that's really lovely. Besides all the
also here
benefits.
we can see, Yosefa, we can see here that the brutto, the gross salary towards keren ishtalmut, towards pension, isn't the same salary.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
That can be either they started the keren ishtalmut later on during the year, and then it's only on part of the year, or maybe it's only based on part of the salary, not on the whole salary of the keren ishtalmut of the salary. It doesn't always have to be the same, because the keren ishtalmut is usually a benefit, so it's something that's open to negotiation between the employee and the employer.
Very nice. That's good to keep in mind. So it is possible that this happened later, but based on the fact that this is a very round number, then it does seem like this might have been negotiated. Very interesting.
And also, I'll add on another thing. Some people don't know, but for the employer, let's say if you're an employee and you want a raise from your employer, so getting a raise or getting a keren ishtalmut, for the employer, a keren ishtalmut costs less, is cheaper, because he has less tax on it. So, and for the employee, it's a pretty good idea because it's closed for 6 years, but then you get it tax-free, and gains are also tax-free. So it's a very good savings plan. So it's like a win-win situation. As part of a salary negotiation, you can ask for a keren ishtalmut, or like part of it as a raise and part as a keren ishtalmut. For the employer, it's a good thing because it costs a little bit less, and for the employee, it's a good savings plan.
Might be worth figuring out if anybody else in the corporation, if the company has a keren ishtalmut first. And sometimes it's something the employer just can't handle dealing with. They don't know what to do. They don't want to have to make one more payment to a separate place. But yeah, for tax-wise, it's very nice.
It's worth checking.
Absolutely. And then you can see the last thing here is the pitsuim. And the pitsuim is something that the employer is not matching. This is only coming from the employee. Something the employee is not. It's not coming out of the employee salary, only from the employer. And this is basically like severance. It's a fund. And stop me if I'm wrong, but my understanding is depending on the contract, it can affect whether or not this is your money already. But I think it's, from what I understand, in the past, I don't know, maybe 10 years almost, most contracts, it's really yours no matter how you leave the company. Is that?
These days, once they're the pensiat chova that started in 2008 on much lower percentages, and now grew to 6% of severance, so it's built into the pensiat chova, to the mandatory pension plan that the employer is obligated to contribute to. So the pitsuim, the severance, is supposed to be released to the employee in almost any case, besides if the employee did some kind of crime and doesn't have the right to get severance. But in many other cases, the employer releases the pitsuim to the employee. The question is if he needs to add on money, another amount above this amount, like to define, to be as the definition of chok pitsuim pitsuim, that's already a different question. But in the general regular cases, so yeah, it's the employee's money.
And when somebody does leave a job, they are not required to actually cash out their pitsuim, right?
It's even a much better idea in most cases to keep the money within the fund, but it's not only keeping the money within the fund, it's actually asking for the money to go in towards pension, like locking it up towards pension. It's called Ye'ud Levetzef Kitzba. You don't even remember those words, but the idea is that the money becomes from severance, it becomes pension money. Now, the idea of that is that there's a tax benefit when you retire. Now, this tax benefit is supposed to give you a tax benefit on your retirement money, on your monthly pension. If you pull out severance money during the years till you retire, so you get gypped twice. First of all, you're taking money, and you'll have less money when you retire. Most people. Now, if we do it throughout the years, so we're gypping our pension by 40%, which is a lot of money, and also it's not gaining any more money. So unless we have a really good investment or something an alternative way to gain more money on that money, it's usually a good idea to keep it in the fund. So that's one thing. The second thing is there's the tax exemption, which we have a tax benefit on the monthly retirement payment that we're going to be collecting. If we pull out the severance, so we get, at least on part of the money, we'll get a tax benefit on the money we're pulling out on the severance, but we're gypping our tax benefit when we retire. So we always need to weigh the two options and see where I'm going to get a better deal, where I'm getting a better tax deal. Especially since if we pull it out, let's say I pull out today 100,000 shekels of pitzuim. When I retire, they look at it not as 100,000, they look at it as 100,000 plus 35% on the money plus madad. Meaning it can be much more than the 100,000 shekels we're pulling out today, at least another 35%. So it's really worth speaking to a professional.
So this column is basically things the employer is paying, and then these are things that came out of the employee's salary. So on the code 42, mas haknasa, this particular person did not pay into mas haknasa. It could be, for any number of reasons, having to do with how many points or credits they have, or maybe a woman having children, if this is their first job, then this isn't a large amount of income yet, things like that. But of course, they're always, no matter how much they're making, they're always paying into Bituach Leumi and Damei Briut.
And the 35% zikui, this is the amount of that the employer is putting aside towards the pension. Like we can see, it's part of the amount, part of this amount, part of it. There's like a tax benefit as a zikui.
Okay, so here we have a different format of a Mea V'Sheish. So I just want to go over real quickly. This is also a format that I like. You can see this person started working in February, and their salary is on the first line, and they have some other things going on. You can see, again, this person also doesn't pay any taxes, any mas haknasa taxes. Of course, they have their Bituach Leumi is coming out, the 3,000 sum, and the Damei Briut. I think this is interesting to look at because I do often see people complaining about how much taxes they're paying, and I think they're not looking at the details. They're saying, okay, I know my employer told me I was supposed to get 9,500 a month, and I'm not getting anything close to that, so I must be paying tons of taxes. It must be because Israel has so much taxes, and it's not. It's very often it's other things. Could be. There are people who pay a lot of taxes, but it's very, very probable that a lot of it is other things. It's your health and things like that, and your pension. So I like this format of the Mea V'Sheish because you can actually see where your pension money is going. And this is really great for one of my specialties is helping people get caught up who have not filed in a long time. And a lot of the people I'm working with don't know where their pensions are. So with this, I can tell them. Gilad, that's not actually the name of a company. That's not is that the name of a pension company? Or that's
it's merged into Harel. It's now
okay, that's what I thought.
It used to be and it's all under Harel.
Okay, so if you do see Gilad, this is a Mea V'Sheish from 2019. If you see Gilad, then you need to be calling Harel up if you're trying to track down your pensions. Usually, if somebody doesn't have a relationship with their pension advisor, which obviously I highly recommend, that's great. But if you don't have a relationship with your pension advisor, per your broker, and you just need your year-end statements for whatever reason, I usually tell people the first place to just look at the bottom of your Mea V'Sheish. Does it say where your money's going? So in this case, this person has both their Keren Hishtalmut and their pensions going in, and then So you can see this is usually where it's going to say if it's Klal, Migdal, Hafenix, whatever you have, it'll say the name here, and then you can easily look up how to contact those companies.
Most insurance companies have an option to go online with your that Zehut number, get a one-time password by SMS, and just go online and get the form. It's much simpler than it used to be.
Yes, and possibly simpler than calling your pension advisor, even though it's lovely to be in touch with them. Please just try to go online and just stick in a few information. Very basic. It could be very, very simple. So here you have what type of fund you have. Now, you may see that you have 2 lines for Pitsuim, you have 2 lines for Kupat Gamel, things like that, Minhalid, all kinds of things here. This is the one I'm showing as an example is relatively simple. And then you see the percentages that someone is putting in. And this is what the employer is actually, these are the total amounts the employer put into these 3 different funds. Now, these 2 are very likely the same account and separate sections of the same account. And then this is going to be a separate account. The Keren Hishtalmut is always separate. Keren Hishtalmuts, they don't merge into pensions. They don't merge into Kupat Gamel. They stay Keren Hishtalmuts for their whole life. You could move it from broker to broker or whatever, from insurance company to insurance company. The same with your Kupat Gamel or your pension. It could move, but you're never going to move a Keren Hishtalmut. It's always going to be a Keren Hishtalmut. So if you don't know where your Keren Hishtalmut is and you say, oh, maybe this is it, no, it's always a Keren Hishtalmut.
Right.
And then something that you might see over here is that sometimes the employer is putting in sort of like more than an amount that is above the tax benefits.
Higher salaries, relatively higher salaries, that the government wants to encourage also employers and employees to contribute to pension. On the other hand, they don't want people with high salaries to contribute endlessly and get a very high tax benefit, so they cap it. Okay, so there's a salary like above a certain salary, which changes as the Sahabim and Mutzab Meshik average salary changes. So this amount changes, but let's say 2.5 times the amount of the average salary, which is approximately 25,000 shekels today. So that a month. So above that amount, if an employer is contributing to pension above that amount, so on that amount, there's the employee is going to have tax, is going to be paying tax the same way he pays tax on, let's say, if he has a company car.
Okay, so now we're going to jump over to the actual pension statements. At the top, it does say it's a pension chadash, pensia chadash, and the company is psagot, which is one of a large handful. And then you have here, this is, first of all, there are a number of statements that you might be able to get from the company, from your pension provider. One is called an ishor mas. Ishor mas is something you might need to give your Israeli accountant. For U.S. tax purposes, really for U.S. FBAR purposes, FBAR, it's a separate report from your tax return where you must report how much is in your accounts. And for that, I don't need the tax information. I don't need to know how much Israel says you can deduct from taxes. What I need to know is the balances, the total balances. So this is a year-end statement. And so one of the things I look at here is I make sure it doesn't say any specific quarter. It's not saying March or September. It is the Sof Shana. I look at the year. Sometimes in the account, it can be a little confusing. You might find your 2018 statement in 2019 where it says 2019 or it says 2020, and that's where you got to get your 2019. But look at the year. Look at the year. Don't look at the date it was printed. Look at the actual year that is showing, and then make sure it says Sof Shana. And so we're looking at this statement. The things I'm looking at least are I look at the beginning balance, I look ending balance, and then you can also see the contributions here, and you can also see actually you can see this is the beginning, this is the contributions, both from your employer and employee, both your contributions and the employer's contributions. And then you have, in this case, there were some losses, and this is also where you would have gains, right, if it was a good year. And then you have your the domain pool. Do you want to jump in here and talk a little bit about that?
The main rule is the management fees, is how much the insurance company or the investment home takes for managing the money. You can see it in percentage on the left left side of the form, right on the left. So we can see here, Dmei Nihul Me'afkada and Dmei Nihul Mechisachon. Dmei Nihul Me'afkada is how much money, let's say if we have a 10,000 shekel salary, okay? And our contribution is 1,850 shekels, our contribution, the employee and the employer together. So the 1,850 shekels goes into the pension fund. Before the money goes into the fund, the insurance company deducts the management fee. They take 2% in this case, okay? Here we can see 2%. In other cases, they can take up to 6% if it's a pension fund. And the minimum mechisachon is the annual amount, is the annual percent they take every year of the accumulated amount that we have in the kupa. They take another percentage. Here it's 0.2. It can be up to 0.5 in the Keren Pensia and higher in the Bituach Menadim. And we can see also on the right side the Alut Bituach Nechut, Alut Bituach Sheli. What is that? The insurance plan, Keren Pensia, is actually, I call it the good, the bad, and the ugly. Okay? It's supposed to cover 3 options. We hope for, Bezrat Hashem, that we're going to get a kitzbah chodshit, we're going to live and be healthy, and then we'll reach the age of 67 for men, so we'll get a monthly pension, a monthly salary, actually. Now, what we see has it says meaning based, we can see here, meaning based on the money we have already accumulated in this, we're not considering continuing, meaning only based on the money we have in this account, you're supposed to get a 498 shekels a month once you reach the age of 67. So that's the good. The bad is if there's early passing, okay? If we pass early before we reach the age of retirement. So if we have a wife or kids, they're going to get money, okay? A monthly pension, based not on the amount we have accumulated, but based on the amount of our salary. Okay, so it's supposed to be that the widow, gets 3,000. In this case, 3,576, and children will get 2,384. All of them together till they reach the age of 21. Okay, so that's the God forbid case of early passing. And there's another option, of the if we reach the age of pension with disability that we're unable to work at all. So then we get a monthly pension from the Keren Pensia. We get a monthly. It's supposed to be 75% of the salary, and then it's in this case it'll be 4,770. It's very important to see. In this case, we can see here that, like what we said, there's a linkage between our salary and how much is actually going towards pension from our salary. Because if there's a big difference between our salary and between the salary, the basis le pensia, so we're going to be covered for less than our real salary. Okay. If we go down to the contributions themselves, we can see here we have 2 employers. Okay. So we have the first one is giving us 3,554. The second one, 3,543 in this case. And then if we look at the average of all of these, if we put them together and look at the average, so it's supposed to give us our coverages on the top of the form. And then we have Alut Bituach Nechut, Alut Bituach She'erin, which is the losses, like the cost of the insurances we have in the pension fund. And I'll just go again, speak again about the Dmei Nihul, till we during the first years of our accumulating money. So the more I would put more emphasis on the amount of Dmei Nihul Me'afkada, of the Dmei Nihul of the monthly contribution, because we don't have a big amount. Once we reach 100, 200,000 shekels within the Keren, within the fund, so then it's much more dramatic every year how much they're taking off the accumulated amount, and then I look more at the Dmei Nihul Mechisachon, Dmei Nihul Mitzvah of the accumulated amount, because every 0.1% is much more dramatic. If I'm looking at 100, 200, 300,000 shekels, it's much more dramatic. And we have to look at the balance between also Dmei Nihul and also the gains, because if we can go to a very cheap fund, but they're not gaining very well during the years, without the years, so it's not such a great idea. Sometimes it's worth paying a little bit more and getting better better returns, but it's not something we can.
I do want to
really
warn
control.
somebody if they're a little bit new to this and they're only just looking at statements for 2018-19, they might not see as nice gains. 2018
Right.
was not a pretty year for most funds. This doesn't mean this particular fund is bad. This is. I mean, I'm not neither of us are financial advisors, me most of all. I'm not a financial advisor. Motty could speak more about potential gains and different allocations and different risks that you can take on through funds. But anecdotally speaking, definitely 2018, many or most funds saw losses. So that's not surprising.
Also 2019, by the way, most of the year was fine, but only November, December, there was a big dip. And then the annual reports didn't look so great. Yeah, but it's very important to remember, and that I want to say that we're talking here in pension, at least, especially in pension, we're talking about very, very long-term plans, meaning if somebody's 35 and he's planning and is going to meet the money only at the age of 64 or 67, so it's a very long term. So even if there are losses, it's very important not to panic, not to do any dramatic changes, of course, not after losses, in order for the money to correct and have, so we can enjoy also the way it goes up. Because people lose, not when they lose when they take the loss and they turn the loss into something actually happen. Because if it's losing only on paper, alania, it's not a real loss. It's a psychological loss. It's not really.
Right. In tax terms, we call it a realized loss or an unrealized loss. So you're realizing a loss when you actually sell something at a loss. You have an unrealized loss when the value has gone down, but you haven't sold it. And the same with gains.
Exactly.
And then while
there's another form that you wanted to show of the plan that isn't active.
Yes.
Okay, so let's see it.
So while we're on this form, while we're here, I just do want to mention for someone doing their FBAR, reporting this number to the US for their foreign bank and financial account report, this is the number that they would be looking at. Generally, I'm not going through quarterly statements. I generally figure most pensions are going up through the year, so it's usually the year end, but I'm going to look at the year end. I'm going to compare that to the beginning of the year, which if it's higher, that would be the highest balance because you're taking the highest balance during the year. And then if you've taken out money, especially if you've taken out the whole thing, the distribution you take may be the highest. So let's say this ended in a zero and you had what came out of here of 24,000, then that 24,000 would have been the highest balance. So that's what I'm looking at when I'm looking at reporting to the FBAR. And then for tax purposes, I may also be looking at the sums down here. So this is the total that the employee put into it, the total from the employer put into it, and this is the total that the employer put into the Pitsui portion of it. So if we continue on to here, this is a fund that is not active, and I can see that's not active because there's no contributions. And there's a few reasons we want to point this out. So one, I say in Israel, you sneeze and you get a new pension. I think we had one, my husband maybe had one where they didn't put in the amount they were supposed to put in and they couldn't put in to his regular fund for some reason. So all of a sudden he's got a whole new fund. I don't know how these things happen, but I do find that people in Israel have a lot of pension funds. They come to me to do their taxes and say, oh, I just have one fund in Migdal, one fund at Kalal. And all of a sudden I found out they have 12 funds in Migdal that they didn't realize, and they have all these inactive funds. You can see this person started out with 1,900 shekels in their account and they didn't put anything into it, but they still are having their management fees coming out of it. So they ended up with less. They ended up with less than they started with.
Yeah, so here we can see that, first of all, this plan is not a Keren Pensa, it's a Bituach Menalim, which is not non-active, and it's with a very low amount. Usually, what we do in cases like this, I recommend to transfer what kind of tails either into the main pension fund, in order to keep it also meatier, and also to reduce the management fees, because here you're paying 1% off the accumulated amount, which is not a lot of money, based on 1,800 shekels. Again, why pay if you don't have to? It can be 0.2. So why? That's one thing. The second thing is when we have higher amounts, we can do all kind of games with the allocation of money. meaning we can take money that's non-active now, put it into kupat gemel, and then there are different kind of kupat gemel, different like investment tracks. So there's the solid ones, the regular like traditional insurance companies. There's
It looks like this is in bonds. Am I reading this correctly?
Yes, this is in bonds. Right. Some kupat gemel can follow like an international madad, like S&P 500, and we don't want to put all of our pension money following the S&P 500 because it fluctuates very dramatically. But maybe part of it we do, so we can play around with that. So there's all kind of different things to do. Either transfer, or in some cases we just keep it separately. It is important to follow and see what we have. In short, the difference between bituach menalim and keren pensya is that keren pensya, pension fund, is not a contract. It's a takanon, meaning it's terms that can change, like a takanon of kupat cholim can change. We don't have any power over that. On the other hand, the management fees of a keren pensya are much lower in most cases. And the bituach menalim, the older versions, like they're different generations of bituach menalim. So it's very important. It's not a one answer. There's no one correct answer for everybody. It depends on what kind of preferences he has in terms of what kind of insurance you want, how much you want to have control on the policy, which in you invest, and also the management fees is a very, very big part of the decision. Most people today have keren pensya. That's what the regulation also is very pushes towards that direction. In many cases, it is the right thing to do, but it is something to think about. Because, like in some cases, it's not always the best idea. But again, it's something very personal. Some people can say, "Look, I want to have let's say life insurance within my pension as a lump sum. I want a lump sum or a monthly sum. If I don't want it as a monthly sum being paid out to my beneficiaries, so the keren pensya knows only how to pay a monthly payment towards the beneficiaries, and if I want a lump sum, that won't help me. Or if I want better coverage for overtime, or if I want to have a contract and I want to know exactly the terms. The older bituchei menalim, the older generations have, it's called a mikadem muftach. The idea of the mikadem is that when we get the pension, we're not collecting a lump sum. We're collecting a monthly annuity, a monthly salary. Now, the insurance company or the pension fund takes the amount of money we accumulated, and then they slice it, and we get a monthly slice. Okay? Now, the mikadem is the number of months that the insurance company divides by. So in the older versions of bituchei menalim, this mikadem was guaranteed ahead. When you joined the policy, you knew by how much they're going to divide. In newer policies today, it's not only from the age of 60 that you guarantee it. So the management fees today are lower in bituchei menalim than they were in the past, but on the other hand, it's less guaranteed. So again, there's a lot of what to consider here. Very much based on people's personal preference.
And I'm always a big fan of combining some of these things also for a number of reporting reasons. Number one, this will need another line on the pension. On the FBAR, a lot of people forget about these things. They only think about their having pensions as the ones that they're actively putting into, and they're not thinking about all these little ones. So when I work with somebody, even if they have been doing their taxes, I often like to check in and do a few things to make sure they don't have any pensions that they've forgotten about. From some past job that they had, when they were 18 for 9 months or something. And then these little bits can sit around and they do require reporting to the US. And sometimes this example, this one is Klal. Sometimes Klal might not be sending them emails anymore, because it's inactive. And they do really need to make a little bit more of an effort to make sure that they report this and they get the reports every year and it does go on their FBAR. And
there is also a way, there's a way, first of all, you can, if people know what companies you can go online, like we said before, and we can see it within each company. There's also a system called Hamislaka Pensioni, which you can log on as a client, and if that connects to all the insurance companies, you can get information from there to see where all of your funds are, or you can contact the licensed advisor or provider, and then they can also pull out the information and also give more explanations.
So if you do think you might have a lot that need to be combined, you want a second opinion on where your money is, contacting someone such as Motty, or starting with your own pension advisor, if it's not Motty, is a good place to start. But this is something you can also do yourself. One of the websites that I recommend is www.swiftness, swiftness.co.il. And I actually made a video, not beautiful, but it's walks through exactly how to get a one-time statement from there. It costs 20 shekels, and you need a credit card with your name in it. And it makes a really lovely report. So I'm a big fan of that. I even require it from a lot of types of projects that I do. If somebody hasn't reported ever before, I like them to get this to make sure that we're not missing anything, because it is really important if you're doing like an amnesty type program where you have to report everything. We don't want to miss anything, like any of these little things. So I do that. And then let's move on just to this Karen Hishtalmut that I have up as an example. So again, the Karen Hishtalmut is more of a medium-term savings plan. Is something that you can take out before retirement. So this is an active one. It's small, but it's active. So it started the year with less than 2,000 shekels, and then this person put in another 2,300 shekels, and then over here we can see the fees that this person is paying, and you see also there's no pitsuim portion. You have the
Hishtalmut has only the employee and the employer.
The employee, the employer, which is going to be about 3 times as much, and the total there. So I think this covers a lot of the statements, and I think we should go into the details in another video. So give people some time to gather their statements and see what they have, and maybe give you a call. What's the best way for people to reach you if they have some questions?
The best way is by WhatsApp or by telephone. Also email is okay, but WhatsApp, my phone number is 052-577-1134.
Thank you so much for joining us.